young cats just got here, you don't know what you missed.
I would agree. I said, Lord, I won't.
It was the 3rd of January 1998. They all stood on the winding stairway of the rotunda of Hyman Theater at the central campus of Houston Community College in preparation of having their pictures taken. 80 to 90 of the cream of Houston blues performers. I stood there in awe and realized what I was watching was a total of over 3,000 years of experience on that staff. Some of them I knew. I've been writing about most of them for over 30 years. Some of them I did not know. There were too many to name, and I'm sure if I tried, there would be someone I would miss. But I will say this. Think of your favorite veteran blues artist, and it was a good chance it was there at this historic picture-taking session. Like every group of friends and associates from the same profession who had not seen each other for years, there were lots of hugs and kisses, and you could feel the joy and happiness. These were the faces of blues people who had worked everything from the little bucket of blood joints and small clubs along thousands of miles of highway, where they might or might not get paid, to the great concert halls of the world, where they were paid thousands of dollars. They'd seen it all. The clubs where you could work but couldn't come in the front door or sit at the table and eat a sandwich. And the 400 and 500 miles of riding on two-lane highways to get to the next job. They'd heard the cheers of adoring fans and suffered the indignities and disrespect of the business people they'd worked for. But through it all, they'd survived. And there was pride and happiness in their eyes. The idea of this photo session came from a suggestion by Conrad Johnson in a conversation with C. Roger Wood, an instructor of the English department of the HCC and a blues buff. Johnson made the statement that it would be a great thing to get all the local veteran blues performers together for a picture, and Wood went into action. There's historical precedence for this event. Some 40 years ago, this same thing was done in New York, where some of the greatest names in jazz were photographed. It was called A Great Day in Harlem. That was the inspiration for this photo shoot that Wood did. Where jazz figures were shot in New York, blues performers were shot in Houston. Wood's handling of the logistics and the photographic work of James Frashier from Chicago made it a wonderful process and turned a Saturday afternoon with 90 veteran blues performers into a great day in Houston. I'm Frank Torrey.
That photograph, that's a rich tapestry there.
The people in that picture represents a genre and a space and time and a music whose practitioners are vanishing very rapidly.
Before I visited Houston in 1995, I had been a photographer for 25 years, and I had been photographing music a lot. I had spent 2 years living in Ireland, photographing landscape and people, and I just had a real desire, though, when I came back to the States from living in Ireland, to photograph music subjects. And back in 1979 or 1980, I started photographing some musicians a bit, and starting in 1985, I seriously started photographing blues musicians in Chicago. So I've been going to Houston now for 21 years, and I don't think I've missed a year or maybe even a single visit. There might have been at least 2 visits in the early days in starting in '96. It was 3 and 4 times a year going down there to do field work with Roger Wood and to interview and photograph our blues friends. Even though I'm living over here in Ireland full time, Houston has a big part of, it's a big part of my life.
I just got a question. Where is he from?
When I met him, he was living in Chicago.
Chicago.
That's where he grew up.
Okay.
His ancestors are from Ireland.
When he took my picture in the book there, you know, I never take the picture. I hate all of them almost, you know, but now all the pictures that anybody have ever taken of me, so people will come to that picture first, the picture that he took. Yeah. They like that one best, you know, so I'm really happy about that.
I know that's true.
I know I'll never forget when he came out to the house to take mine. You were with him, of course, and we just talked, and we just talked about all kind of things, and he just seemed so down to earth. And when he took the picture, and I just liked it, and I liked it when I saw it, I said, "Oh, I wish I had one like this." And he gave me one this big. Yeah, I got it on my wall, and everybody that comes there has to comment on that picture. Me sitting at the drums, you know, in a pose.
I'd like to thank him for when he came to Real Neatos and did the interviews and different things, and he got Miss Maxine in on all that. I'll treasure that for the rest of my life. Right? Yeah.
I first came to Ireland in 1977 for a 2-year stay, and I photographed a lot. I played guitar with traditional Irish musicians, visited family, made a lot of friends, heard a lot of storytelling, and maybe start doing album covers. It was just a thought, but it came from a deep feeling about music. I've been living here in Ireland now the last 9 years, working on projects, photographing people, playing some music, interviewing musicians over here about traditional Irish music, and trying to make twice yearly forays to Houston to see all my blues friends and come to that, visit the wonderful community that I've grown to love for the last 21 years.
things in this whole experience on that day, but throughout my long 20-plus year collaboration with James Frere is whenever we made plans for something and it came to fruition, often other doors opened up that we hadn't anticipated. And so, just like these musicians knew that if you were going to play a song, there was a certain chord structure and there were certain lyrics, but there was also room for improvisation. And when they were performing live on stage, sometimes the most dynamic part of the song was the part that wasn't scripted in advance, but that was improvised. In 1995, photographer James Frere began to come to Houston at my invitation, began to photograph some of the blues musicians that I was becoming friends with and becoming fans of as I learned more about this city's music. We began to learn more and more about these people who played the blues, these people who created the blues, and some of the history that preceded us in Third Ward.
When I first started coming to Houston, I came on a Thursday and left on a Sunday. And I soon realized that Sunday was a great night for music in Houston. And so after that, I always started coming home on a Monday. But when the Blue Monday started in the Third Ward at Miss Ann's Playpen, I never went home until a Tuesday because the Blue Mondays were not to be missed. So I felt like a bit of a fly on the wall in there. I was really comfortable at Miss Ann's, and I started photographing not just the musicians performing, but people sitting at their tables or people enjoying the music and capturing Bobby Lewis when he was doing different things. And you know, there was a spread of food out on the counter of the bar there, and that set up just a great vibe for the place. But then I noticed there was things going on outside too, and later on, in later years, we'd be outside and Bobby Lewis would be out on the sidewalk cooking and holding court and talking to his friends. And so I decided that I needed to get outside and take some photos that capture the atmosphere of what it's like to be hanging out outside the club.
I don't know where we end up tonight. Sweet thing, they come along. Sweet thing, they come along. They make me feel all right tonight. I don't know about you tonight, but I'm beginning to feel good. Oh, come on.
I had heard about Blue Mondays in Chicago, and I know Houston had them. It was just a tradition when all the musicians were off of work that day, and some people, hairdressers and hotel people, used to not be working that day. And people would come in the late afternoons, and some people would just skip their jobs and call in sick, and they wouldn't come in until Tuesday. And when we went to Miss Ann's Playpen, we found out why. And one of the photos I took was a photograph of two men talking, leaning up against the wall of the club, and there was the awning of Miss Ann's there, and there was a big old car sitting on the right there, and it was nighttime already, and there was sort of a shadowy figure in there talking to another person. It was a long time exposure. That was Ed Berry having a conversation with somebody.
This picture is a frozen moment in time with part of my history in it. But I wasn't in the photo because then they said, line everybody up, get everybody up here, and we're gonna take pictures. Then I had to go round up Nelson because he wasn't walking, he wasn't that mobile. So wherever he was going, he had to go directly there, not roaming around all over the place. And I guess that day that was my job.
Ed Berry was a really special friend to me and to Roger as we were working on our Down in Houston project. He was just a real supporting spirit who always seemed to be around when we were going to clubs to hear music, if we needed somebody's advice, if we needed him to help us find another musician that we hadn't been able to meet because we didn't know how to reach them. In some cases, Ed brought musicians to us to meet us and for us to photograph them. And he was just a really special guy. He was just always around when we were on the scene. And he was just one cool dude.
Before we did the big group photo, he had another idea. Most of the people that I was introducing him to were male performers, and he wanted to meet some of the female performers. And so we got leads on who the female singers were, and we found about 5 or 6 people: Martha Turner, Mickey Mosley, Iola Broussard, Jewel Brown, Gloria Edwards, Lavinia Lewis. And we were going to photograph them, but instead of doing this simply as individuals, we organized a little reunion. And we did it in space at the Houston Community College campus where I taught. Now, our purpose for doing that was efficiency. Let's get all these women together and let's photograph them. And we can do one photo shoot where we get 5 or 6 different people covered. And to our surprise, when those women met us there at the school that day, the event took on a nostalgic social element that we hadn't anticipated because it really was a reunion for them. It was a phenomenon. They enjoyed seeing each other and they united as a group. Some of these women hadn't seen each other in years. Sometime after that, we were in the home of the great Houston jazz band blues orchestra leader, Conrad Johnson, one of the most distinguished music educators in Texas history and one of the great musicians in this city.
So I'm still with the Conrad Johnson's Jazz Orchestra.
It's been
another father, teacher, businessman, leader, as well as musician and performer, because he had worked with so many. And if you came through Houston, be you lived here or visited, you came through proud.
And he said, have you ever heard of a movie called A Great Day in Harlem? And of course, we both knew that film by Gene Bach. And it was this film telling the story of a famous photograph of jazz musicians that had been shot in front of a brownstone in Harlem back in the 1950s. And so that idea kind of clicked with James Frere's notion of doing group portraits as well as individual portraits.
It was just a great idea, a great intuition. Conrad Johnson's really sowing the seed to us for emulating a Great Day in Harlem type group photograph, and my love of taking group photographs. But it was just, I knew it would be a real honoring moment and day for all the Houston blues musicians.
We began gradually in 1997 to have this idea about getting everyone to come to one place and to do one big group photo. And we began to plan for that. And there were lots of decisions to make. Perhaps the biggest one to start with was where would be a place that would be suitable for everyone to meet. And we searched all kinds of locations in Houston. And one day, James was visiting and we were walking on the college campus and we happened into a part of the campus that had originally been part of Temple Beth Israel. An annex to it called the Freed Memorial Tower when it was originally built. And it has this amazing stairwell with an upper level. And as James walked through there, he had an epiphany. He said, maybe we could do the photo in here.
Really, the architecture inspired me to stand here, and the beauty of this design made me want to be here and put the people in it and take their picture from here. Even if someone had to look up, it just, I think, it just, that the visual inspiration and my reaction to this space made me want to be right here to make the picture.
This temple has a lot of history. Yeah. Well, in fact, I think it's the oldest temple in Texas, and maybe this part of the United States. I mean, it still belonged to Beth Israel, but we got blessed. The last people blessed in that temple were my wife and I.
The people who would have lived here would have called this the South End. And for them, Third Ward, after this ceased to be kind of a political subdivision, really remained identified with the African-American neighborhood that today lies predominantly east of US 59.
The Third Ward was wonderful. I mean, everybody was friends. Of course, there were no drugs then. The only drugs were marijuana, and the musicians had it, and that was it. Yeah. And it was like a big family. Third Ward we felt that we were the Cadillac of all the neighborhoods.
Nonetheless, because of the growth of Houston's population overall, and of course within that the growth of the Jewish population, the congregation still needed more room. So they built another wing attached to the Levy Community House, designed by another distinguished architect, Irving Klein. And Klein designed this wing, of which today only a portion survives, with materials and architectural detail that sort of complementary to Joseph Finger's 1924 building, but nonetheless sort of stood slightly apart, and it kind of marked the passage of 20 to 25 years since the completion of the original temple building. So it's really intriguing to me to see how Irving Klein really addressed all these practical issues, but sort of made architecture out of them. And architecture that's very sort of characteristic of this period in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Just the kind of fluidity of the stair. And again, the way in which the steps, as they sort of step down, kind of make the semicircle underneath the landing of the stair. The incorporation of these planting troughs. In the late 1940s, that was very, very cool. From the second floor, you really do see the kind of grace, the sort of rhythmic grace that Irving Klein introduced in the design of this building.
Well, you're on lucky ground here. Yeah. You'll be blessed because, not as a religious thing, it's just a nice thing. This has been a very lucky spot for everybody.
It was so great to just be here ahead of time and to be setting up my lights and my camera and taking Polaroid test shots and just figuring out, just anticipating what was going to happen, but really not knowing also how many people would really show up, and so once we were ready and the whole room was kind of quiet, all of a sudden musicians started coming, and then it just became like a big reunion, a big party, a gathering.
We got there really early and got set up for the photograph. And it was a beautiful day. The weather was nice. It was a little cool outside, but not bad. And folks began to arrive. And we eventually had 74 who showed up in time for the photograph. We had about 4 or 5 people who got there after the photograph was done and hence weren't in the group photograph.
So heartwarming was how many musicians hadn't seen each other in a long time, and just all the hugging and laughing and talking and storytelling going on, and it was just, it became as important or more important maybe than we even knew. And that this reunion and this space that we, and gathering that we provided for the musicians, it was just a great idea, a great intuition. It's fun. It's sort of like being a ringmaster in a circus, because you've invited all these people, they're waiting for you to sort of direct them, tell them what to do. At the same time, you really don't know how it's all going to happen or fall together, and we just worked everybody finally into a composition, and by then I was upstairs looking through the camera, and the picture, taking the group photograph was like, you know, isn't this honoring thing to do for the musicians, but it was also like a bit of theater. Photography is kind of sometimes it's like, I don't know, it's a bit of a performance really, because you're creating this scene, you're inviting all these people to be there, you're not really in control of it all, because people can close their eyes or blink or turn their head, or with a group photograph, you just kind of gotta throw yourself into the event, and again, the fact that they're standing there, whether they're looking where you want them to or not, it sort of doesn't matter. It's just, they're all part of this huge scene. It's not just like a portrait of one person. It's this happening, really. And I think that's really what this reunion was. It was a real blues happening. And we need to fill in some more spaces. If there's an empty space, someone please step back into it. Most of these people in the front row need to get back up. You guys need to find your way up into these empty spaces. Clarence, you better stay up front. You and Conrad, we'll see you. Where's Kenny Abear? Old Lightning Hopkins.
And James had started photographing blues musicians on his own years before I ever met him. And one of the first blues musicians he had ever photographed was back in his hometown of Chicago. James had photographed the great musician who lived in Houston, Texas, named Lightning Hopkins. And in 1970, James had shot this wonderful image of Lightning Hopkins. James had never been to Texas, had certainly never been to Houston.
Like I say, Lightning plays not from here, but from here. Okay, I had to learn that. See, I had to learn that from him. He was playing from here, not from here. Okay.
Like he said, he played from here and anywhere else he could think of besides here.
And believe me or not, man, there's some things that Lightning was doing on that guitar that you better think about.
Mm-hmm. Lightning he'd sit on the edge of the stage and he'd be talking to all the people gathered around, all they'd be gathered around. He especially liked to talk to the women. He didn't talk to the men too much, but he asked a woman, he'd say, "What's your name?" And she might say, "Oh, my name is Susie." Well, right away he'd do 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 do. There's a gal named Susie. Dun, 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 and he'd go on for about 4, 5, 6 measures instead of changing, you know. And then he'd change it. And she's so pretty to me. Lightning was a real original person. He was original.
Clarence Green was everybody's daddy. I mean, he was about a rule, everything. And he played that way. Everybody had to be clean. Your face didn't shine. Everybody had to have a powder puff. So before you go on, you get your face all, no sweat. If you didn't have one, you borrowed somebody's powder sponge. But man, he was a master businessman. He was a business musician. He was the first one guy out there, very disciplined on everything. Punctual with time, the breaks, what time you leave. I learned all of it. It's with me today.
But these are very influential people, and the reason why is because they were so dedicated. They were dedicated to those of us coming up after them. They were our teachers, the leaders that showed us everything from a correct way to sing a note to the correct way to deliver a note. But they took time with us to teach us the etiquette of a bandstand in your performance.
I want everybody to pretend they won the lottery. Keep looking up here at me, please. Keep looking right here. Keep looking up here. Hi, Jay's here.
Nelson was influenced by Joe Turner. But Nelson was Nelson. And Nelson had his own talent. And Nelson could write.
Wake up early every morning, baby, with the rising sun. T-99, T-99. Wake up early every morning, every rising sun. T-99, T-99. Thinking about my honey dripper. Hey, all from the girl
Teddy was actually one of the first people that I ran into when I first came to Houston. At Shady's Playhouse.
Simmons?
On Simmons, right. On Simmons Court, they call it. I think it's Teddy Reynolds, L.A. Hill, Wide Mouth, and Little
Van
Green, and Ben Turner.
Yeah, Ben Turner.
The people that was there at that time. And Teddy was the one that that really invited me into that group at Shady's.
Guess what? See, I know I went to see the Playhouse when I was in my band uniform.
Back when you were in Yates High School?
See, I forgot this picture. Henry Hayes. Yeah, he played before Teddy.
And my name, ladies and gentlemen, is Calvin Owens, okay? Woo! Saturday night at El Dorado. Oh, it's a great night for me. I'm so excited being here at the El Dorado. You know, when I walked up those stairs in 1950, it was the greatest moment of my life. It was just like going to play at the Apollo Theater. Because back in the day when you played the El Dorado Ballroom and part of the house band at the El Dorado Ballroom, you was the hottest cat in town, you know? So, doing it again tonight. All right, we gone.
I was born right here in Houston, Texas. Fifth Ward, lived in Sawdust Alley right down the street from Calvin.
He could sing almost anybody's song, whatever it was.
It didn't matter.
I don't care who was by. Sometimes he didn't know his keys. Yeah. He couldn't call a song over. Just if you start playing, he could sing it.
Yeah. Big Robert was a jokester. Yeah. He'd wait till pay time. And
always happy.
In the confusion, he'd come up and say, you paid him first, probably, or second. He'd come up and say, did you pay me?
So at age 12, I could walk into the Whispering Pines. I could go into the Club de Lis, and I used to go and see Grady and Roy Gaines. Well, see, Roy was not but close to the same age as myself. So if he could go in, I could go in. Except he was playing, I wouldn't. I'd walk right on in the door.
Quite a lot. There's Clarence Holloman.
But Miss Evelyn Johnson, when she was a very young woman, began to work with the original Peacock label, and she was the brains in that office that made that company grow and expand and handle itself in a professional manner. She not only was helping to run the record companies, all of those 5 companies that came under Roby's ownership, Miss Evelyn Johnson also owned the Buffalo Booking Agency. She ran that agency. Folks, will you please welcome our special guest of honor, Miss Evelyn Johnson.
Anybody got an Evelyn story they want to tell here while we're setting up?
Yeah, she was a sweet, mean lady.
She hadn't changed a bit. She hasn't changed a bit. She ain't dyed her hair like the rest of them women. They ain't did nothing like that. Just a natural beauty,
I'm
that's
letting
all.
the gray come out. No, it just comes in the wrong place. It's in the wrong.
It was an amazing phenomenon. The reunion went on for hours once the photograph was done.
And then on top of that, I had to leave because I had just gotten another gig, so all that cut me short. And I kind of had to leave early. I showed it that. So that's how I missed the photo shot.
Yeah.
That's how I missed the big shot. And that's the one I showed you. Wish I'd been on too, you know. Yes.
And look back here. Look back here. Yeah, that's it. Right. That's real nice. I remember the first shot we did with you was when you had that pink suit on.
I think the whole theme of the day really was reunion and remembering and seeing faces that were familiar. A moment where everybody was just posing for the camera. Some people were posing for the camera. Other people were sort of in the state of talking to each other or leaning back to listen to what somebody was saying. So it was just a real moment of another more sort of intimate reunion that took place after the group photo was made.
Gene Bach called her film A Great Day in Harlem, and it was an inspiration to us. But certainly for the vast majority of citizens in this large city, they remain oblivious to what happened. But for those of us who were there on January 3rd, 1998, it was really a great day in Houston, too.
Us all together, we probably never would have gotten together like this.
Yes.
We did this photo.
When I was here today, I had to take a picture of the stairwell being open because I just remember it being so full of people and people all the way up the sides. And some of them clowning around a little bit too much.
That's right, me. But I didn't get here early. I got here late, didn't I?
Yeah, you got here right before the photo was shot.
Yeah, just like today.
To see all these great musicians from this time to that time, through the years I worked with them, here, there, and then to come here that day was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
They are the greatest of that genre in that era. And when I look at the photograph, that's what I see. These guys brought you what you can no longer get.
like when you speak of blues, you speak of music that is played from the heart, that you put your soul and your mind into it.
We're not here for a long time. There's not too many of us left.
I've had a beautiful time. Beautiful time. I hope they put a little light on it so this bar can just keep on shining and shining. Thank you.
Reflecting on this group photo, I mean, it was just a beautiful moment in time. And in the 3 years I had been coming to Houston, I realized from looking at that photograph, I had met, every one of those musicians. I had heard them play. They were all such beautiful individuals and played such wonderful music. And to see them gather here and enjoy themselves, it was like a huge, gigantic family reunion.